I always thought love was like the land, something you nurture that stays with you forever. How wrong could a mother be? That crisp autumn morning, I clutched the envelope in my hand, running my finger over the gold-embossed lettering. Come see my new family. My daughter Emily's handwriting. The invitation had arrived 3 months after I'd emptied my savings account to pay for her fairy tale wedding and help with the down payment on what she called her forever home, a charming colonial on 5 acres that reminded me of the house I'd raised her in after her father left. 30 years I spent raising that girl alone. 30 years of double shifts at the hospital, of postponed dreams and canceled vacations, all so she could have everything I never did. I don't regret a minute of it, or at least I didn't until that day. I remember driving up the winding gravel path to her new house, the October leaves swirling around my car. I'd brought her grandmother's quilt as a housewarming gift, something she'd always admired, something that connected us to our past, to the women who came before us. When Emily opened the door, she didn't hug me. The first sign something was off. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Mom, come in. I want you to meet everyone properly." The living room was filled with people I recognized from the wedding. Her husband Mark's parents, his siblings, a few friends. They all went quiet when I walked in, like actors who forgot their lines. "Everyone," Emily announced, her voice carrying an unfamiliar edge. "I'd like you to meet Caroline." Not Mom, not Mother. Caroline. I laughed nervously. "Sweetheart, they know who I am." "And this," she continued, putting her arm around a woman I recognized as Mark's mother, Patricia, "is my mom." The room seemed to tilt. "Excuse me?" "Patricia has been more of a mother to me these past few years than you ever were," Emily said, her voice steady and rehearsed. "You were just the woman who raised me. She gave me real love." The quilt slipped from my hands. I'd witnessed Emily and Patricia growing close during the wedding planning. Patricia had strong opinions about everything from the flowers to the venue, and I'd stepped back, not wanting to be the overbearing mother. But this was something else entirely. "Emily, what are you talking about? I'm your mother." "A mother would have been present," she said coldly. "A mother wouldn't have missed dance recitals for work or been too tired to help with homework." Each word was a knife. Yes, I'd worked long hours as a nurse, to put food on our table, to save for her college, to give her everything I could. But I'd never missed a recital. I'd fallen asleep over math problems with her, heads together at the kitchen table. What was happening? Mark stepped forward, handing me an envelope. "We think it's best if you respect Emily's wishes." Inside was a formal letter, written on legal stationery. "You are no longer welcome at this address." "You can't be serious," I whispered, looking at my daughter, the girl who'd crawled into my bed during thunderstorms, who'd worn my nursing cap around the house playing doctor, who'd cried on my shoulder after her first heartbreak. "I've never been more serious," Emily said. "Patricia has shown me what real family support looks like. She's been guiding Mark and me on our journey. She's helped us see clearly." Patricia stepped forward, diamond bracelets clinking on her wrist. "Caroline, dear, it's just healthier this way. Emily needs stability now that she's starting her own family. Your emotional patterns aren't what she needs." What emotional patterns? I'd been the steady one, the rock. I looked around the room, searching for an ally, but found only averted eyes. Something wasn't right. This wasn't my daughter speaking. These weren't her words, her thoughts. "Emily, can we talk privately?" I asked. "There's nothing to discuss. This is my life now. My real family." She gestured around the room. I felt the ground shift beneath me. But even in my shock, something caught my eye. A framed document on the wall. The deed to the property. My name was still on it as the legal owner of the land. The arrangement we'd made when I helped with the down payment. The house was in their names, but the land itself was mine until the full amount was paid back. I managed a small smile, clutching my purse to steady myself. "I understand you need space," I said, surprising myself with my calm. "But remember, Emily, foundations matter. The ground we stand on matters." As I turned to leave, Patricia called out, Don't make this difficult, Caroline. I paused at the door, turning back to face them all. I've never made anything difficult for my daughter. I've only ever made things possible. Driving away, tears blurred my vision, but my mind was already clearing. Something was very wrong with my daughter, with this situation. This wasn't just rejection. It felt orchestrated, manipulated, and I had raised Emily better than to discard people who loved her. I picked up my phone at a stoplight and called the one person who would understand. My oldest friend and lawyer, Diana. They've done something to her, Di, I said, my voice breaking. This isn't my daughter, and I'm going to find out what's happening in that house. The call dropped suddenly. Looking down, I saw a text message from an unknown number. Stay away from Emily if you know what's good for both of you. We're watching. My blood turned to ice. Who was we? And what had they done to my daughter? That threatening text message kept me awake all night. By morning, I'd moved from shock to something more useful. Determination. I sat at my kitchen table, creating a timeline of Emily's behavior over the past year. When had my sweet, thoughtful daughter transformed into this cold stranger? The changes had been subtle at first. Missed Sunday dinners, shortened phone calls, evasive answers about her life with Mark. Everything accelerated after she met Patricia. Mark's mother had swept into our lives like a hurricane during the wedding planning, offering to help with her country club connections and decorator friends. I'd been grateful initially, a single mother welcoming another woman's guidance for her daughter. Now I wondered if I'd invited a predator into our lives. I called Diana again, this time from my landline. I think Emily's being manipulated, possibly by her mother-in-law, I explained. And someone sent me a threatening text. Diana's voice sharpened. Save everything. And Caroline, this might sound paranoid, but get a new phone. If they're monitoring your communications. She didn't need to finish. I'd worked enough domestic abuse cases at the hospital to recognize the patterns. Isolation, replacement of support systems, rewriting of personal history. What about the land? I asked. The 5 acres are still in my name. That might be our leverage, Diana said, but we need to tread carefully. If Emily's being manipulated, confrontation could push her further away. After hanging up, I drove to the mobile store for a new phone, paying cash. Then I visited the county records office. The clerk remembered me. Back again, Caroline? How's your daughter enjoying that beautiful property? That's what I'm trying to figure out, I said, requesting copies of all documents related to the land transfer. Reading through the paperwork at a nearby cafe, I discovered something odd. There was a second mortgage on the house, taken out just 3 weeks after the wedding. Mark and Emily had borrowed heavily against the property, but where had that money gone? Their wedding hadn't been that extravagant. On my way home, I drove past Emily's neighborhood, careful to stay on the main road. A black SUV with tinted windows was parked near their driveway, the same one I'd spotted outside my apartment complex this morning. My nursing instincts kicked in. When a patient shows unusual symptoms, you look for patterns. You investigate. You don't give up until you find the cause. The next day, I called in sick to work for the first time in 5 years. Instead, I visited Mark's workplace, a real estate development firm where he'd recently made partner. The receptionist was young and friendly. I'm Patricia's friend, I lied smoothly, just dropping off something for the charity auction. Patricia was known for her social climbing and fundraising events. Oh, Mrs. Collins isn't here today, the receptionist said. She's been in meetings with Mark all week about the new project. Patricia worked with her son. This was news to me. The lakeside development, right? I fished. No, the one out east. The retirement community. A retirement community. On land east of town. Something clicked in my mind. I drove straight to my old neighbor George's house. Before retiring, he'd worked in city planning for 30 years and still kept his ear to the ground. Caroline, what a surprise, he said, welcoming me in. Over coffee, I asked about any retirement developments being planned. Funny you should ask, George said. There's a big project trying to get approved. High-end retirement village. They've been buying up properties around Miller's Creek. He paused. Including land adjacent to where Emily and Mark built, if I'm not mistaken. Miller's Creek, where my daughter's house stood. where my 5 acres sat. Who's behind it? Some investment group. Collin's Development, I think. Mark's family business. And suddenly it all made horrible sense. George, how valuable would my land be to them? He whistled low. If they're building what I think they are? Critical. Your 5 acres connect 2 larger parcels they've acquired. Without it, the project doesn't work. I felt sick. And they couldn't just offer to buy it from me? They probably didn't want to tip their hand about the development. Property values skyrocket once word gets out. Or maybe they knew I'd never sell the land meant for my daughter's future family, her children's inheritance. I thanked George and drove to Diana's office, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. They're using my daughter to get my land, I told her, spreading out the documents. Mark and Patricia are developers. They need my property for some retirement complex. Diana studied the papers. The second mortgage is concerning. If they default, you could lose your interest in the property too. But why would they default? They're clearly not hurting for money. Diana's expression was grim. To force a sale under distress. It's a tactic some developers use. Create a situation where all parties have to sell quickly. They're manipulating my daughter as part of a land grab? My voice rose. Using her like a pawn? We need proof, Diana cautioned. And we need to help Emily see what's happening. From what you've described, they've isolated her, convinced her you're the enemy. And I thought about Patricia's jewelry, her perfect highlights, her country club friends. What lies had she fed my daughter? What promises of wealth and status had she dangled? I have to talk to Emily alone, I said. Away from them. Be careful, Diana warned. If they're willing to send threatening messages, who knows what else they might do. That evening, I parked down the street from Emily's house, watching. The black SUV was gone. Around 6 p.m., I saw Mark and Patricia leave together. No sign of Emily. I waited 30 minutes, then approached the house. My heart pounded as I rang the doorbell, clutching a photo album as my excuse for the visit. The door opened. Emily stood there, her face pale and drawn, so different from the glowing bride of a few months ago. Mom? What are you doing here? Her voice wavered between anger and something else. Fear? I found some old photos, I said. I thought you might want them. She glanced nervously over her shoulder. You shouldn't be here. Mark and Patricia will be back soon. 5 minutes, Emily, please. She hesitated, then stepped back to let me in. The house looked different, more formal, less like the cozy home my daughter had once dreamed of. Are you happy, sweetheart? I asked softly. Of course I am, she snapped, but her eyes didn't meet mine. Patricia and Mark take care of everything. Everything like what? Finances, the house, my schedule. She twisted her wedding ring, a nervous habit since childhood. That's a lot of control to give someone, I observed. It's not control, it's support, she recited, as if reading from a script. I opened the photo album to a picture of us at the beach. Emily at 10, missing her front teeth, laughing as we built a sandcastle. Remember this? You said you wanted to build houses when you grew up, real ones that would last forever. Something flickered in her eyes. Recognition. Memory. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. She checked it, and her face drained of color. You need to leave. Now. Emily, whatever they're holding over you, you don't understand. She whispered, her voice breaking. They have everything. The house, my accounts, even my ID. I can't. She stopped abruptly. Can't what, sweetheart? The sound of a car pulling up made her flinch. Go out the back, she hissed, pushing me toward the kitchen. If they find you here, I'm not leaving you, I insisted. Mom, please, she begged, and for the first time she called me Mom again. I'll contact you when I can, but you need to be careful. They know people. The front door opened. Mark's voice called out, Emily, whose car is that down the street? My daughter's eyes met mine, filled with a terror that broke my heart. Go, she whispered, but don't give up on me. I slipped out the back door just as I heard Mark's footsteps in the hallway. My heart thundered in my chest as I crouched behind the garden shed, watching through a gap in the fence as Mark entered the kitchen. Even from a distance, I could see the tension in his shoulders, the controlled anger in his movements. Who were you talking to? His voice carried through the open window. No one, Emily replied, her tone flat. I was on the phone. With who? The edge in his voice made me flinch. Just a work colleague. A sharp sound, his hand hitting the countertop. You don't have colleagues anymore, Emily. You don't work anymore. We discussed this. My blood boiled. Emily had loved her job as an elementary school art teacher. What had they done to make her quit? I waited until their voices moved deeper into the house before making my escape, staying low behind the hedgerow that bordered the property. The look in Emily's eyes haunted me. That flash of my real daughter, terrified but still fighting somewhere inside. Back home, I called Diana immediately. I saw Emily. She's definitely not okay, I said, pacing my living room. She mentioned they have her ID, her accounts, everything. It sounds like financial abuse, maybe worse. Did you get any proof? Anything we could take to the authorities? Nothing concrete, I admitted. But I know what I saw. My daughter is being controlled. Caroline, Diana said gently. Domestic situations are complicated. Without evidence, it's your word against theirs. And they've already painted you as the unstable mother who can't let go. She was right, and it stung. I needed leverage. Something more substantial than my maternal instinct screaming that something was wrong. What about the land development angle? I asked. If they're using Emily to get to my property, there must be a paper trail. I've been looking into Collin's development, Diana said. They've bought 7 properties around Miller's Creek in the last year, all through different shell companies. Very carefully done. But there's a public hearing next week about zoning changes for that area. I'll be there, I said. The next day, I did something I never thought I'd do. I went back to work at the hospital and requested access to Emily's medical records. As a nurse in the same healthcare system where she'd always been a patient, I technically had access, though it violated every ethical rule I lived by. I could lose my license, but some risks were worth taking for my child. What I found chilled me. 3 months ago, Emily had visited the emergency room at 2 a.m. with a sprained wrist and bruised ribs. The report noted she'd fallen downstairs, but the attending physician had flagged it as a potential domestic violence case. Emily had refused further examination and left against medical advice. With Patricia, not Mark, according to the visitor log. I printed nothing, took no copies, but committed the details to memory before logging out of the system. Then I visited Dr. Reeves, who'd treated Emily that night. Caroline, he greeted me warmly. What brings you to the ER? Aren't you working upstairs these days? It's about my daughter, I said, keeping my voice low. She was here a few months ago. Fell downstairs. His expression shifted subtly. I can't discuss patients, you know that. She's in trouble, Alan. I think her husband and his mother are isolating and controlling her. Maybe worse. He studied me for a long moment. As a medical professional, I'm obligated to report suspected abuse. If I had seen something concerning in any patient, I would have already reported it. But, however, he continued deliberately, I might advise a concerned family member to contact Adult Protective Services if they believe someone is being isolated from support systems, financially controlled, or emotionally abused. Those cases are harder to prove, but just as damaging. He was telling me what I needed to know without violating confidentiality. Dr. Reeves had suspected abuse but couldn't prove it. Thank you, I said. Document everything, he replied. Times, dates, observations, evidence matters. At home that night, I created a secure email account and sent a message to Emily's old personal address, hoping she still checked it. I'm here when you're ready. You're not alone. I love you. 2 days later, when I checked, there was a response. Just 3 words. Land Records Office. The next morning I was waiting when the county clerk opened the doors. The same friendly woman greeted me. Back again? You're becoming a regular. Just double-checking something, I said casually. Has anyone else requested documents about my property recently? She tapped at her computer. Let me see. Yes, someone came by yesterday. Young woman said she was the property owner. My heart jumped. Emily? My daughter? That's right. Seemed upset. She was looking at the original deed transfer, the one with the special condition. The condition I'd insisted on when helping with the down payment, that the land would remain in my name until fully paid off, and that it could never be sold without my explicit consent. A clause I'd included to protect Emily's inheritance from any future divorce. Did she say anything else? The clerk lowered her voice. She asked me about removing a name from a deed without the owner's consent. I told her it's impossible without forgery, which is a felony. She seemed relieved. Emily was investigating too, fighting back in whatever small ways she could. The zoning hearing was scheduled for Friday morning. I arrived early, surprised to find the meeting room already crowded. Developers, concerned citizens, and county officials milled about. In the front row sat Patricia and Mark, heads bent together over a stack of documents. I slipped into a seat in the back, just as the board chairman called the meeting to order. Today we're discussing the proposed rezoning of the eastern Millers Creek area from residential to mixed-use commercial to accommodate the Lakeview Senior Living Development. Patricia approached the podium first, the perfect picture of community involvement in her tailored suit and pearls. Lakeview will bring jobs and tax revenue to our county, she began smoothly. Collin's development has secured all necessary properties except one. Her gaze swept the room, not noticing me in the back. We've made generous offers to the remaining holdout, but sometimes progress requires more decisive action. The threat was veiled but clear. Mark followed with architectural renderings and economic projections. The development looked impressive. Luxury apartments, medical facilities, recreation areas, all requiring my 5 acres as the central connecting point. During the public comment period, I approached the microphone. My name is Caroline Campbell. I own the property in question. Patricia's head snapped up, her eyes narrowing when she saw me. This development may have merit, I continued calmly, but I have concerns about the methods used to secure properties, including potential financial coercion and elder abuse. A murmur ran through the crowd. That's absurd, Mark interrupted. Ms. Campbell is upset because her daughter has chosen to limit contact with her. This is a personal vendetta. The chairman frowned. Please allow the speaker to finish. I have documentation, I said, showing that properties were acquired through shell companies hiding the true buyer. I also have evidence suggesting undue influence was used against vulnerable property owners. It was stretching the truth. Diana had the documentation, not me. But the look on Patricia's face was worth it. For the first time, I saw uncertainty crack her polished facade. After the hearing, as I walked to my car, Patricia approached, her heels clicking aggressively on the pavement. You're making a serious mistake, she hissed. This development will happen with or without your cooperation. Where's my daughter? I demanded. Emily is exactly where she wants to be, away from you. Then why does she need a keeper? Why can't she access her own bank accounts? A flicker of surprise crossed Patricia's face before she regained control. You know nothing about their marriage or finances. I know enough, I replied. And soon others will too. As she stalked away, I noticed something that made my heart stop. A small origami crane tucked under my windshield wiper. Emily's signature creation. She'd made them since childhood. I carefully unfolded it to find a message inside. Storage Unit 23, West Side Rentals. Code 0517. Come alone. My hands trembled as I drove to West Side Rentals. May 17th, Emily's birthday, was the code for the storage unit. A date that mattered to us both. Whatever she'd left there, she wanted to make absolutely sure I would be the one to find it. The facility was quiet that evening. Security cameras the only witnesses to my arrival. Unit 23 was at the far end of a row, partially hidden from the main driveway. I punched in the code, holding my breath until the lock clicked open. Inside was a single plastic bin. When I lifted the lid, I found a treasure trove of evidence. Bank statements showing large withdrawals from Emily's personal accounts, transfer documents with signatures that didn't match her handwriting, medical reports, and, most disturbing, a journal. I sat on the cold concrete floor and began to read. October 15th, Patricia suggested I quit my job to focus on building our family legacy. Mark agreed before I could even respond. When I mentioned loving my students, Patricia said teaching was a nice hobby, but not a career for someone married into the Collins family. November 3rd. Found out they took out a second mortgage without telling me. When I questioned Mark, Patricia stepped in and said it was a business opportunity that would secure our future. They didn't explain further. November 28th. They've taken my credit cards, saying they'll manage everything. Patricia called it family financial planning. When I objected, Mark reminded me how much they'd done for me, how I'd be nothing without them. December 10th. Patricia reorganized my closet. All my old clothes, gone. She said they weren't appropriate for a Collins. I cried for hours after she left. January 5th. Mark exploded when I mentioned wanting to see Mom. Said she only wanted my property, that she'd always been jealous of our success. Patricia showed me evidence that Mom had been talking to developers behind our backs. I don't know what to believe anymore. The entries became more disturbing as they continued. Emily described being monitored constantly, having her phone checked, being told who she could speak to. The accident that sent her to the emergency room happened after she'd questioned a document Patricia wanted her to sign. And then I found it. A USB drive taped to the final page with a note. Security footage from our home cameras. Mark doesn't know I have access. I gathered everything into my bag with shaking hands. This was more than a land grab. This was systematic abuse disguised as family support. They'd isolated her, controlled her finances, manipulated her into turning against me, and possibly physically harmed her. On my way out, I called Diana. I have evidence, I said. Real evidence, and I need to get my daughter out of that house tonight. Don't do anything rash, Diana warned. If they're as dangerous as this suggests, they hurt her die. They're controlling every aspect of her life. I won't leave her there another night. Then we do this properly, Diana said firmly. Meet me at my office. I'm calling in some favors. 2 hours later, I sat in Diana's office with 3 other people. A detective from the Financial Crimes Unit who owed Diana a favor, a domestic violence advocate, and a judge who'd agreed to review the evidence immediately. This is highly irregular, the judge said, looking through the documents. But given the circumstances, particularly the medical reports and these financial transfers, I'm granting an emergency protective order. What about the property issues? Diana asked. Based on these documents, I'm also issuing a temporary injunction preventing any development, sale, or transfer of the property in question, the judge said, signing the papers. And Ms. Campbell, if your daughter chooses to press charges, there's enough here to support a case. The detective nodded. Financial elder abuse, fraud, possible domestic violence. We can build a case. For the first time in months, I felt hope, but getting Emily safely away from them was still the immediate challenge. We can't just show up with police, the domestic violence advocate cautioned. That could escalate the situation dangerously. We need to get her alone, present the option to leave and respect her choice. I know how to do that, I said, thinking of the hospital where I worked. We have protocols for situations exactly like this. We created a plan. The next day was Friday, the day Patricia always went to her hair appointment downtown. Our sources confirmed Mark would be in court all morning on an unrelated matter. That gave us a window to reach Emily alone. I barely slept that night, running through every possible scenario in my mind. What if Emily refused to leave? What if she'd been so thoroughly manipulated that she couldn't see a way out? What if Mark or Patricia changed their schedules? Morning came slowly. Diana picked me up at 9 a.m., and we drove to Emily's house with the domestic violence advocate, Sophie. The detective would remain on standby out of sight. As we approached the house, I saw with relief that both Mark's and Patricia's cars were gone. I rang the doorbell, my heart in my throat. When Emily opened the door, she looked even thinner than before, shadows under her eyes. She gasped when she saw me. Mom? What are you doing here? Her eyes darted nervously to the street. They'll be back soon. No, they won't, I said gently. Mark's in court all morning, and Patricia's at her standing appointment. We checked. Something like hope flickered in her eyes, quickly followed by fear. It doesn't matter. They have cameras everywhere. They'll see you. They installed cameras in your home? Sophie asked, stepping forward. I'm Sophie, by the way. I work with victims of domestic abuse. I'm not a victim, Emily said automatically, but her voice lacked conviction. "We found your storage unit," I said quietly. "We've seen the evidence, sweetheart. The journal. The videos." Emily's face crumpled. "You weren't supposed to come until it was all ready. I'm still gathering proof." "There's already enough," Diana said, introducing herself. "We've spoken to a judge. There's a protective order in place if you want to leave." Emily hesitated, looking back at the house. "You don't understand. It's complicated. They've been good to me in many ways." "Sweetheart," I said, recognizing the language of the abused, the justification, the minimization. I'd seen it countless times in my nursing career. No one who loves you would isolate you from people who care about you. No one who respects you would control your money, your clothes, your friends. Mark says I'm just not good with practical things. And Patricia says you only want the land? The land was always for you, I interrupted gently. It's your inheritance. I put it in my name to protect it for you, not to control you. They're the ones who want it for their development. Development? Emily looked confused. The retirement community. Their big project at Miller's Creek. Your house, your land, is the keystone property they need. I could see her processing this, connecting dots she hadn't seen before. Is that why they pushed so hard to buy this specific property? She whispered. Why Patricia suddenly became so interested in being my mother? We believe so, Diana confirmed. The documents in your storage unit suggest they've been planning this development for years. Emily's hands began to shake. I thought I was losing my mind. Mark kept saying I was imagining things, being ungrateful. Patricia would tell me one thing, then deny saying it later. When I found those transfer documents with my signatures I don't remember making, Mark said I was just forgetful. It's called gaslighting, Sophie explained gently. It's a common control tactic. Emily looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in months. I'm so sorry, Mom. The things I said to you were their words, not yours, I finished, taking her hands. I knew that the moment you said them. She began to cry, silently at first, then in deep body-shaking sobs. I held her as she hadn't let me hold her since she was a teenager. I don't know what to do, she whispered against my shoulder. If I leave, they'll take everything. The house is just a building, I said firmly. We can rebuild. We can start over. But they'll fight. They'll say I'm unstable, that you've manipulated me. Diana held up the USB drive. Let them try. We have evidence of financial fraud, at minimum. Emily took a deep breath, then nodded. I need 10 minutes to pack some things. While she gathered her belongings, I noticed framed photos on the mantel. All of Mark and Patricia's family. None of Emily's past, none of me. Emily returned with a small suitcase and a wooden box I recognized, her grandmother's jewelry box. As we walked to the door, a car pulled into the driveway. My blood froze. Patricia stepped out, her face transforming from surprise to rage when she saw us. What is this? She demanded, striding toward the door. Emily, what's going on? Emily's grip on my hand tightened painfully, but when she spoke, her voice was steady. I'm leaving, Patricia. Don't be ridiculous, Patricia snapped. Where would you go? What would you do? You have nothing without us, without Mark. Emily straightened her shoulders, and I saw a glimpse of the strong young woman I'd raised. I have my mother, she said simply. I always did. Patricia's face contorted with rage. After everything we've done for you? The connections, the lifestyle, the guidance? This is how you repay us? I felt Emily's hand trembling in mine, but her voice remained steady. What you call guidance, I call control. What you call lifestyle, I call a cage. Patricia turned her fury toward me. You. This is all you're doing. You couldn't stand seeing your daughter with a real family, with real opportunities. A real family doesn't isolate, manipulate, and control, I replied calmly. A real family doesn't forge signatures or hide second mortgages. Her eyes narrowed. Preposterous accusations. Mark will have your nursing license for this. We have friends on every board in this county. Diana stepped forward, her professional demeanor unruffled. Mrs. Collins, I'm Diana Winters, legal counsel for both Caroline and Emily Campbell. We have documented evidence of financial fraud, including forged signatures on financial documents. We also have footage from your home security system showing concerning behavior. The color drained from Patricia's face. You're bluffing. The judge who signed the emergency protective order didn't think so, Diana countered. Nor did the detective from Financial Crimes who's currently waiting for our call. Patricia's gaze darted between us, calculating. I could almost see her mind working, searching for leverage, for a way to regain control of the situation. The development, she said finally, her voice hardening. You have no idea how important it is. How many people are invested. This isn't just about us. Mark has partners, powerful partners. They won't take kindly to interference. Is that a threat? Diana asked. It's reality, Patricia snapped. You think this ends with you driving away today? Emily signed contracts. She has obligations. Under duress, Diana replied. And possibly with forged signatures, which we'll be investigating thoroughly. Patricia's phone rang. She answered it, turning away slightly. Yes, I know. She's leaving. With her mother and some lawyer. Her voice dropped to a harsh whisper. Handle it. A chill ran through me. Patricia ended the call with a cold smile. Mark will be here shortly. I suggest we all sit down and discuss this rationally. We're leaving now, I said firmly, guiding Emily toward Diana's car. The cameras, Emily whispered. They're watching. They're always watching. Sophie, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. That's why we have police on standby. Your safety is the priority here. As we walked down the driveway, a black SUV, the same one that had been following me, screeched to a halt, blocking our path. Mark jumped out, his handsome face twisted with anger. What the hell is going on? He demanded. I'm leaving, Emily said, her voice smaller now that Mark had arrived. No, you're not, he said with chilling certainty. Get back in the house. We'll discuss this privately. There's nothing to discuss, I interjected. Emily has made her decision. Mark ignored me completely, focusing on Emily. Baby, your mother has filled your head with lies. You know how she is, always jealous of what we have, always trying to control you. We've talked about this. I saw Emily waver, the months of manipulation taking their toll. These were familiar phrases, well-practiced tactics. The land, she said suddenly. Did you marry me for the land? Mark's expression flickered. What? That's ridiculous. The retirement community development, Emily pressed. You need my mother's property to make it work, don't you? That's why Patricia got so involved with the wedding, with the house selection. That's why you pushed for this specific property. Business and personal are separate things, Mark said dismissively. Yes, the land would be useful for the development, but that has nothing to do with us, with our marriage. Then why forge my signature on property documents? Emily challenged, gaining strength. Why take out a second mortgage without telling me? Why cut me off from my job, my friends, my mother? Mark's facade began to crack. You weren't supposed to find those papers. Who's been going through my office? His slip confirmed everything. Diana quietly pressed a button on her phone, recording the conversation. So it's true, Emily whispered. All of it. You're being dramatic, Mark said, switching tactics. Every marriage has its complications. Every business has its requirements. We can work through this. There's no working through fraud and abuse, Diana stated flatly. Mark's eyes hardened. Abuse? Please. Emily has wanted for nothing. We've given her everything. Except freedom, I said. Except respect. Except honesty. A police cruiser turned onto the street, responding to Diana's prearranged signal. Mark saw it and stiffened. You're making a serious mistake, he warned Emily. When you come crawling back, and you will, things won't be the same. You're right about that, Emily replied, a new resolve in her voice. They won't be. The officer approached, and Diana quickly explained the situation, showing him the protective order. Mark and Patricia retreated, their threats muted, but their eyes promising retribution. As we drove away, Emily finally broke down, years of tension and months of control releasing in heaving sobs. I held her, my own tears flowing freely. It's going to be a long road, Sophie warned us gently. Recovery from this kind of situation doesn't happen overnight. We have time, I assured her. And we have each other. 6 months later, we sat together on the porch of my small house, watching the sunset. Emily had moved in with me while she rebuilt her life, piece by piece. She'd returned to teaching art, this time at a community center for seniors. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. She was working with the very population Mark and Patricia had planned to exploit. The legal battles had been brutal, but necessary. Mark and Patricia had fought viciously, using their connections to pressure the judge, to smear our names in the community. But evidence doesn't lie. The forged documents, the financial records, the security footage, it all painted a damning picture. In the end, they'd settled rather than face a public trial. The development project collapsed when their investors learned of the fraudulent methods used to acquire properties. Mark's law license was under review. Patricia's social standing, the thing she valued above all else, lay in tatters. I got a call from the realtor today, Emily said, sipping her tea. Someone wants to buy the land. What did you tell them? That it's not for sale, she said with a small smile. Not now, maybe not ever. After the settlement, I'd transferred the land fully into Emily's name. No conditions, no strings. It was always meant to be hers. What she did with it was her choice alone. I'm thinking of building there again, she continued. Not right away, but someday. A smaller house. Something that's truly mine. I think that's a wonderful idea, I said. Would you help me design it? She asked. I want to get it right this time. Of course, I promised. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the colors change in the sky. I met someone, Emily said suddenly. A parent at the community center. His daughter takes my art class. Oh? I kept my tone neutral, though my heart leapt with hope. This was the first interest she'd shown in any relationship since leaving Mark. He's a widower, raising his daughter alone. She glanced at me. He reminds me a little of you, actually. That same quiet strength. Is he nice? Very, she said, a genuine smile lighting her face. But I'm taking it extremely slowly. We're just friends for now. I'm still healing. There's no rush, I assured her. The right people will wait. Later that evening, as Emily worked on lesson plans at the kitchen table, I found myself reflecting on our journey. The road ahead would still have its challenges. The legal issues weren't fully resolved. The emotional scars would take years to fade. But looking at my daughter, her head bent over her work, humming softly, I felt a profound sense of peace. They had tried to sever the bond between us, to rewrite our history, to steal not just land, but legacy. They had failed. Some foundations cannot be broken. Some connections cannot be severed. Some love cannot be manipulated away. The land between us, both literal and figurative, had been contested, fought over, nearly stolen. But in the end, it remained ours. A place to build on. A place to begin again. And this time we would build something unshakable,